Well, this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast is packed with all kinds of interesting observations from Dr. Matt Provencher. He's the founder and president of Proven Performance Technology. You may know him even better from his many appearances on Fox Sports. We had just a great conversation. We're going to talk about NFL football, fantasy football, how the bookies in Las Vegas use data to determine the outcomes of football games. Most important, how do players avoid injuries in professional football? How can we use data, use smart sensors and smart devices to avoid those injuries, prevent them, and learn from them? We also talk about the Navy SEALs, his experience working with the highest performing special operations members of the U.S. military, doing the same thing, gathering data and preventing injuries and optimizing performance. Welcome to the Tech Ed Podcast, where we visit with leaders who are shaping, innovating, and disrupting technical education. People who are not afraid to think differently, not afraid to try something new, all with the goal of securing the American dream for the next generation of STEM and workforce talent. Matt, so great to have you on the Tech Ed Podcast.
Matt, it's a great pleasure. Thank you, and it's wonderful to be here.
One of the things that really fascinates me, and we like to dig in often early on with our guests, is how they got to where they are. And as we were taking a look at your background, it genuinely and truly is absolutely fascinating. So, your education led you to medicine, but I think it's important for our listeners to know that you did it by way of electrical engineering. And in as much as we have so many STEM students and teachers and professors and so on that listen to this podcast, what a fascinating way, electrical engineering at the U.S. Naval Academy to a career in medicine. You got to help me understand that a little bit.
Yeah, Matt, thanks for picking up on that. I will tell you that, for all the engineers and STEM folks in the crowd, it can be hard at times, and there's a lot of challenges, but what it teaches you, and I encourage you to persevere and continue the journey in engineering or computer sciences or other sciences. And, I had basically a minor in physics, a minor in mechanical engineering as well. But, for me, the application to that, to the orthopedics, musculoskeletal medicine, and how one of the greatest machines ever designed, the human body, performs. And what these teaches you is to take a few principles, apply them, innovate, and think. And that's what I think was super cool.
Absolutely. So, and I love the way that you think about that when you look at the human body as a machine, and you think about the human body as a really highly engineered piece of equipment in so many ways. It almost is intuitive that you could take a background in electrical engineering, and for that matter, physics and mechanical engineering, and parlay that into a career in medicine, which is exactly what you did. Speaking of the human body operating at a really high level, I want to talk a little bit about your experience with the Navy SEAL teams. I think it was SEAL teams 1, 3, 5, and 7. That you helped set up the Special Forces Tactical Athlete Program as the head orthopedic team physician for those Navy SEAL teams. So tell us about that work. That's fascinating.
Yeah, Matt, that was a great journey where, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we identified that our most important capital, the human body, the human machine, we were probably neglecting a little bit in terms of human performance, optimization from a nutritional, from a sports mental health standpoint, from musculoskeletal and training and strength and everything that went with it. We were really not in that mode. And you only went to see the medical folks like me if you were injured and down. And so we really tried to change the mindset, put a lot of resources towards developing the most important part being the human capital and human performance, and we put a lot of resources, time, effort, fun. Unfortunately, I had some pretty good funding to be able to justify it into helping our people perform at their best.
And so you're really thinking, it sounds like, more on a proactive basis. So rather than just treating an injury after the fact, you're trying to dive in and understand how you can enable the human body to optimize and perform at its optimal level. Am I getting that right?
100%. Yeah, right. That's exactly right, Matt, because you take us, for example, weekend warriors, we want to be able to go out and perform. So we take a better care of ourselves all the way to pro athletes, collegiate, high school, let alone the Navy SEAL and special warfare community. It was really a great journey to learn how to optimize our performance and develop this human performance program that now is, humbly used throughout the military, not just special forces, but throughout the military to help our men and women that serve perform at their best.
So we've had a number of guests on the podcast that have been involved with the U.S. Special Forces. One example would be Bill Berrien, who's now the president of a large machining company. He was a SEAL team platoon commander. He joined us probably a year ago. Another one, John Lowry, who was the assistant secretary of labor under President Trump, focusing on veterans affairs and so on. And John was a Force Recon Marine, actually rose all the way to the level of lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, talking about some of their experiences as they were in the Special Forces. Fascinating episodes. Is there a specific example that comes to you as you think about that work in terms of improving performance for Special Forces military personnel?
Yeah, as an orthopedic surgeon, one of the things is we're trained to do is, if we need to operate, we always like to solve things first without surgery, and of course get people back without having to need downtime without surgery. But we help define better when that surgery was needed, Matt. And what was interesting about that is you'd have these highly trained, super, really in shape individuals, and you'd operate on their shoulder. And, normal folks, even like someone like us, they weren't getting better. And I was like, why are they not getting better? And so that's where really started to uncover sleep hygiene, issues with adrenal axis, issues with testosterone deficiency, other hormonal imbalances, gut absorption problems, things like that. So you could say focus on the shoulder and do everything, whether it was surgery or not surgery. But if we didn't have the rest of the body tuned up, I didn't get that operator, as we called him, I didn't get that operator back to duty because they couldn't recover from their injury, whether it was surgery or without surgery. So it was really an amazing story to put everything together to correct testosterone deficiency, to correct the sleep hygiene and sleep cycle, which you can imagine with these folks being deployed in a high op tempo all the time, sleepless nights, there's a lot of operations at night, etc. It was a really good learning experience where it almost hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, oh, we really have to take care of the from top to bottom, the entire body, to get the shoulder better.
It's just so fascinating that holistic approach to medicine. And I think we're getting incredibly way better at that now than we were, say, 10, 20, 30 years ago. We had a guest on with us maybe 2 months ago, give or take, Brian Kay. He's a PhD in data analytics, and he's the chief of staff at Rogers Behavioral Health, one of the largest, in fact, the largest, I believe, mental health provider in the country, talking about using predictive analytics in the work that he's doing. And believe it or not, what he told us is that you can look at somebody's sleep patterns for 2 weeks and have an incredibly high degree of predictability as to people at risk of suicide just by looking at what their sleep patterns are. So kind of backing into what's taking place in the human body and then projecting that forward using data. Really, really fascinating where things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and really advanced algorithms are taking us in the world of medicine. I know you're no stranger to these types of things. You first created the core algorithm for proven performance technologies, proprietary insights, while you were working as the Navy Special Forces SEAL Team's head of orthopedics and their sports surgeon, which sounds like a really cool title, by the way. I don't know that we've had too many better titles than that one. But
we had a great team working with us too. It was a great crew and a coalition of the willing to help improve human performance.
Yeah, it's just fascinating to think about what you're able to do with that data. But do you ever give us some examples in that work of some insights that you were able to glean from what you call your core algorithm? And also curious about how your engineering background kind of impacts your use of data in medicine.
Yeah, so maybe the second question first. I think the engineering background, and again, for all the STEM folks or people studying or long into it, and people that are much, much smarter than me out there in terms of analytics and data and computer science, what I found is it's super important to be able to put a lot of stuff together so that we don't find spurious correlations, that we decrease our bias, that we really truly sift out what variables are important for whatever question you have. Now, many of the problems is, let me take an example. We had 50 different wearable inputs on our SEAL team individuals and all kinds of data and everything. So you can imagine the millions and millions and millions of data points there, which is great. And even if you put the machine to work to start asking questions, if you didn't ask the right questions ahead of time, or you didn't have a solution in mind for the product ahead of time, you often lost, and you got lost in the weeds. And so we're like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. We found a spurious correlation here. So I think really making sure you're doing what we do in science, hypothesis-driven research, putting the hypothesis together, bringing the question together first, then going to the machine to help you answer that question is super important. That's been my biggest lesson learned out of this. Like, oh, let's just put all the spreadsheet together and let the machine go to town on it. That hasn't been the best way to look at it. Question one being, just like you said, how does sleep affect our warriors, our warrior athletes in the military? And that was an important question, and we learned a lot with it. And then when we started really putting together, almost a 20-page lab report in terms of analyzing all kinds of blood and nutritional marker parameters and other things that we learned, we were able to get some pretty cool correlations in terms of the sleep-wake cycle, the amount of REM people were getting, rest and recovery. And we could all probably do a better job with this as I look at it in our own lives in terms of sleep and sleep hygiene and making sure we're doing the right things. So that was a big project that we undertook, and people like Kirk Parsley and many others that I worked with on the teams, Jason Jagchu, among others, really did a great job of bringing this to the forefront and it's only going to work if you get buy-in from the player, buy-in from us, buy-in from the SEAL team individuals, Special Forces folks. They don't have buy-in for it. If it's not working, they're not going to do it. So there's a lot of moving parts to putting a whole program like that together. But I think that's where we were probably most successful, where the SEAL team guys didn't want to come see me as the orthopedic surgeon. I was going to sign their chit and say, no, you're down for 3 months. You're missing the next operation. Everything you trained for, you're out. So, they don't really want to come and see me unless it was really, really, really bad. We changed that paradigm over 6, 8, 10 years to now being very proactive and using data and analytics and what we called precision medicine, understanding their body better than they knew it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so fascinating to think about that. 50 different sensors and data inputs on the human body gathering. I can only imagine all of the different data about, temperature and exertion and heart rate and, all these other aspects, and then pulling all that data together to glean conclusions out of it. Really, really fascinating. I was in San Diego 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I met a young man by the name of Robert Aiello, who's a Navy SEAL. Met him through it. He's the son of a business associate of mine, a close friend of mine, and we're chatting about his experience in Hell Week and the whole lack of sleep and just the crazy experience that they put these folks through. Obviously, all in the name of making sure that they're in a position to be able to defend and protect our freedom, which is really important, perhaps most important. What you'll love about Robert, he actually played football at Michigan State as well. So he not only is he a Navy SEAL, but he came out of Division I football, which is a little bit of where I want to take the conversation now. So, Matt, you had one of the most intriguing career segues I think I've ever seen or heard about. You took this experience working with the Navy SEALs, using predictive analytics, using all this medical data, these 50 sensors that are on people, and gathering all that information and improving performance and helping them prevent injury, and segued that into somehow a career working with the National Football League, working with the likes of Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots, getting in tight with the Kraft family and understanding how they were using data in their business. You have to share with our audience, how did that segue come about, and talk a little bit about your work with the Patriots?
Yeah, so the story continues from Navy Special Warfare, and my hat goes off to the incredible team we had there, Matt, that helped us understand better the whole human performance algorithm and what was important, what we could focus on, our hypothesis-driven important questions that we were able to get answers to. My first journey out of the military, when I got out full-time after being stationed in Coronado for many, many years and deployed all over the world, was the ability to now go to the NFL and work for the Patriots, work for Bill Belichick, an extremely smart individual, I'm convinced, who's got a photographic memory, and then just great people like Robert and Jonathan Kraft. And Jonathan is a stats guru, math guru, Harvard Business School guy, Williams, super smart. And so we started, I got in there to the team and I said, we're starting to look at human performance, and it was very similar story, very similar parallel of we spend a lot of money to train a Navy SEAL. Health matters. Injuries count. We want to make sure we keep this, highly trained commodity going. Well, the same thing is in pro sports. And we saw that. And my team, I think, really quickly realized that, so we could put together a data package that helped the team and what I called the competitive medical advantage. And so I want to be able to provide Bill, the Crafts, a competitive medical advantage in terms of using data and analytics. Now, it's interesting, Bill would often tell me, he's like, Matt, I'm pretty good at picking Super Bowl teams, and I like data, but only so much, and so I said, well, let me help you. And where we really saw the biggest value, I think, Matt, was in terms of speaking coach language a little bit better from the medical side. There's a lot of, you have many different silos in an NFL team, but the ability to be able to bring those silos together through data, through analytics, and talk about player performance at the end of the day was something we had already done with the SEAL team. So for me, it was a natural to put this program together and figure out what outputs were important to Belichick, McDaniels, Patricia, et cetera, and work with them. So it's not just, their knee has this issue with a cartilage and a meniscus and ACL. And they're like, okay, great. Well, what does that really mean? I could tag that to specific performance metrics was where we really started to make really cool insights and also be able to dedicate resources to the players, just like we did with our Navy Special Warfare. Dedicate the resources to players, more therapists, more strength and conditioning, more nutritionists, more mental health, more sports performance psychologists. Everything we needed, we were able to put that together in a codified program for the team I was working for at the time, the Patriots.
Absolutely. Well, and depending on what span was that roughly in terms of years that you were working with?
2013 to late 16.
Yeah, I mean that covers some pretty successful years with Tom Brady at the quarterback position and leading that team to I think the playoffs probably every year, right, during that period of time.
Every year we were either Super Bowl or AFC Championship, basically. So we had a good run then. But it's a players' game. They did a great job. But I felt my job there was supporting cast to be able to optimize their health, optimize their performance, give them the information, and let them use it to be the best player they could be.
So you're pulling this data from the human body and using predictive analytics. Are you also pulling data from the game of football? I mean, rushing yards, passing yards, ball velocity. I mean, we won't get into ball inflation. That might be an issue we want to stay away from. But just in general, are you tying it to those types of statistics?
100%. Yeah, we're tying it to everything. Why? Because it's coach speak, it's performance speak, it's ESPN, Fox Sports speak, it's what have you, and we're able to really codify the medical health finding with performance, and that's really where the algorithms behave and are constantly getting fine-tuned is injury related to performance. And by the way, the deflate thing, my son did it. Speaking of science, my son did a science fair project in 8th grade and found that when you put the footballs in cold versus hot, the equation PV equals nRT, saw that it went down about 1.8 to 2.4 psi. So
yeah, not that data is important,
just
right?
in different weather conditions. But I sent the poster to we sent the poster around.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely love that. So and when we think about data, and I'm a data guy as well, and I've been around a while. And for us, it was on the business side 30 years ago. You're gathering data in a relational database, or you're using a spreadsheet and writing formulas and trying to find correlations and so on. And obviously now we've evolved into these highly advanced artificial intelligence platforms that we're utilizing to perform supervised learning and unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning and classification learning, all the above. In terms of the technology that you're using, don't give up anything that you can't, but where are you putting the data to be able to glean these observations?
Yeah, Matt, so you're exactly right. We've evolved. I mean, we evolved from, pretty sophisticated spreadsheets to, CSV management now to Python and SQL. So we're really, Python, Microsoft, SQL, we're really in the highest end of SQL because what we're finding is our vendors want immediate time 0.1 second relations right away. So that, with hundreds of millions of data points, it's got to be pretty quick. And so that's, I think, been the biggest learning point. And we can go through it, we can grind it, we can crunch it, just like you and I probably learned in school of managing spreadsheets. In Microsoft Excel was, born when I was just, I think, finishing college.
I remember it. Yeah, I was in undergrad. Yep.
Yeah, we didn't have anything before that.
Right.
MATLAB and a few other things, and that was
Lotus 1, 2, 3.
Lotus 1, 2, 3, exactly. But I mean, you look now, and with the ability to use Python with really good, simplistic but sophisticated coding capabilities, plus a combination of SQL and our AWS server has helped. That's our basic model under the hood to put the data together real time and provide insights right away with our dashboards.
So for our students that are listening to this and saying, and they're in their computer science class in junior high or high school and learning Python and saying, when am I ever going to use this? The answer just might be, if you're a big sports fan, to use it to analyze the game of football or baseball or basketball or whatever you're into and provide incredible insights. It's amazing where those careers can take our young people.
100%. And I guess a shameless plug, if there's anyone looking for some summer work or a master's PhD project, let me know.
Yeah, my guess is that would not be a hard position to fill. That's a really, really cool internship.
It's really cool stuff. Yeah,
absolutely. So let's go a little bit deeper into I know one of the metrics that you're tracking is the banged up score. Do they call that the BUS or the bus, or what do they use as a short version of that?
It's the bus. It's a bus. It's actually a trademark term where, if you go on, Fox Sports in the morning,
yep.
9 to 10 a.m. before the 10 a.m. kickoff Pacific, that is, Bradshaw probably uses the word banged up 20 times. And so it's kind of this ubiquitous term that we've identified a score with. And this is a follow-on to what I did with inside the league and also with our SEAL team guys was coming up with a readiness score. It was basically, military is all about readiness, all about being ready. Can I go? Can I deploy? Can I do my job? Guess what? In the NFL, it's all about being ready. Can I use a player? How much can I use them? What's snap percentage? What do we have to manage their load? Can they do this? So you're able to talk this language a little bit better from managing a knee injury. And I think if this player is normally a 70% snap percentage player of playing 70% of their eligible snaps, might have to manage that down to 40 or 50%. And we know that number. If you do 40, 50% for 2 games after this, they're going to do this with 6 games left in the season and perform much better.
Absolutely. I was watching the Milwaukee Brewers who just swept their, I think it was the Seattle Mariners over the course of the last 3 days, and thinking about everything that we've done with pitch count in a totally separate sport from football, but gathering all of that data and recognizing when we're putting a player at risk, how we're going to have them ready as often as they need to be, how they're going to be able to perform at their highest level. So this whole idea of a team's bus and the banged up score and understanding the effect of play on the human body and so on. Are you actually able to see a correlation between that score and for instance, a win-loss metric or so on?
Yeah, no question. Probably part of our secret sauce, Matt, is health matters, bus matters. It's amazing. And by week 12, 13, maybe 14 at the latest in the season, we know who's going to do well in the playoffs. It's amazing. Now,
yeah, that's incredible.
There may be some fall off, some tough, unfortunate injuries, say week 16, 17, 18 type thing. But, for the most part, you can track how these teams are doing. You can track from individuals all the way to line to cornerback, the cadre of cornerbacks or running backs, and know how they're going to do. It's pretty cool stuff.
If this career as an orthopedic surgeon doesn't work out for you, I'm guessing life as a bookie might be a pretty good career with all this data. And I mean, you must even have people like that coming after you and saying, "Hey, what can you tell us about what's going to happen in such and such?"
Yeah, Matt, our gambling metrics are quite interesting, and we're still refining them. I got to tell you, at the end of the day, Vegas is pretty good. They do a good job, and the lines they set, and by being the bank, it also they know where the money's coming in, so they can shift things instantaneously, just like we can. But they know where the money's coming in, so that helps massively in these gambling algorithms. But in the absence of that, you can still do quite a bit with our algorithms, and there's a lot that goes into this, and it's taken us multiple years to put together. But we've got some really cool statistics now in terms of not just money line, but spread stuff and other things.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And that's all about data too, right? On the gambling side, and then some. So let's get back on the injury topic. I sorry to take us off on that little sideways journey there for the moment, but in recent years, the NFL and other professional leagues they've changed tons of rules to try and mitigate player injuries. And I'm curious that as you look at the human body, human performance, injuries in professional sports, what is the data starting to tell us about the effect of these changes on how long a player can play, the seriousness of their injuries, and so on?
Yeah, man. In general, we're obviously looking at player health and safety and their longevity in the league, and they want to play. They love the game. I've never met a player that doesn't just love going out on Sunday and being a part of it. It's a ton of work to get there. These players are truly amazing. They're how fine-tuned their bodies are. And so when you look at injury prevention or how injury affects their overall performance and longevity in the league, it can be significant. And you look at some of the positions like the running back position where you're in, depending on the year, 3.8 years, 4.2, 3.1 years of average lifespan of a running back with a minimum snap percentage of this, someone who actually plays. And clearly there are ones that have done, amazing and continued on with a long career. But we're trying to look at ways and look at certain injuries to help them improve the longevity of their career, improve their overall health, and so that they can still play and be around the league as long as they want. That's challenging because it's football. You don't know when you're going to get the knee hit or the ankle taken out or a open fracture dislocation of the ankle like Dak or Zeke or others. You've got these things can happen, and it's a part of the game. But how do you mitigate that? And a lot of that is with the competition committee and the basically the rules committee, where you're flagging this but not flagging that, and the coaches have to train to that. Okay, well, no more upper head hits, and that was a big change when I was in the league. Like, that was a really big change when the flags started coming out a lot more, and not even as many as they are now. And they probably should have even been even more in the past in terms of upper head and neck hits and things like that. So, but you still have to stop the player. And so where do the hits go? Well, you coach to the body, you coach to the midsection, you coach to the legs, so there are these shifts during time of injuries and what happens. So it's pretty interesting. I think the league is getting better. There's clearly more work to do, but we're definitely getting better in terms of managing that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and almost out of necessity is you see some of these, players that played 20 and 30 years ago and some of the challenges they're dealing with in today's day and age. And, whether it's a legal responsibility and ethical responsibility, I would argue both. We, definitely had to make some changes to the rules of the game. And it sounds like you're able to use that data and not just the human body data and the stats on the field, but also the way that the rules have changed over time, correlate that to the results, figuring out what's working and what isn't, and actually using that data to reduce the risk of injury. Certainly not to zero. We'll never get there in football and still have a game that's interesting to watch, but to mitigate it as much as we can.
And if you look, Matt, if you look, and just another segue on that, if you look at, a lot of our data looks at, we have everything down to coach and offensive coach and defensive coordinator and head coach and stadium and weather. We got everything. But what's a really interesting look now is turf and type of surface. And clearly Major League Soccer and World Cup Soccer and EPL and everyone, they all play on grass. Different sport, different league, but when you look at starting the turf and certain types of turf, the artificial stuff versus grass, our data's pretty compelling in terms of what grass gives you for some improved safety in certain injuries. Not all of them, but in certain injuries, especially foot, ankle, knee type of injuries on turf, any way we slice it with our data is much worse on turf versus grass. And there are certain other types of turf that matter more, like this stuff called slit film, which is an interesting product and probably, at least in my opinion, not the best for our players to be on.
Interesting. And so, what do we do about that? I guess would be the question. Obviously, you're playing on that field. Some cases, weeks on end. making sure that it's game ready on Sunday. I mean, what do we do about that challenge? Are there solutions that are available to us?
Yeah, Matt. So about half the fields in the NFL are turf, synthetic base, and about half are grass. So you're seeing some of that. If you look at Tottenham, the NFL put in a turf product in Tottenham when they opened up the English, the field in England. I think what, at least my opinion on this would be, we're not going to get rid of synthetic. We need synthetic just in some stadium. Like it's just going to be too hard in certain stadiums to do turf. Now, an indoor stadium like Glendale in Arizona does a great job, and had nice Super Bowl win there for the Patriots, and really nice grass product, but it's wheeled in and out and grows beautifully in the desert sun. It's an amazing engineering marvel to be able to bring that field in and out. But there are just some stadiums we're not going to be able to get rid of the synthetic, and so I guess my opinion is consistency of product and really scrutinize the data for these more devastating injuries, the ones that are a little bit more impactful and limiting, and really scrutinize the data and come down to consistency of turf product. Like, where you're going, it's going to be basically the same turf. It's going to be changed out this many times. And that's a big discussion with, the NFL and the owners, but I'm certain as a player, and you ask them, they would love to have consistency in product. And there's a gazillion different types of turf fields out there.
It'd be fascinating to watch that roll out. Dr. Matt Provencher is our guest here on the Tech Ed podcast. And, we're here as we're recording this, Matt, a week and a half maybe from the NFL draft, give or take. I mean, coming up relatively quickly. We're, by the way, here in Wisconsin, closely watching what's going to happen between the Packers and the Jets vis-a-vis the future of Aaron Rodgers. So everybody's kind of expecting something big as we record this in the next 10 days or so. But would be curious about using your technology, using your data, your predictive analytics as it relates to health, as it relates to player performance. Do you start to get teams that are looking at your data for the purposes of how they look at the draft and the future of their personnel?
Matt, absolutely. And this is where we started, because we had the most granular data at the combine. And so you're just coming off the combine in February, which is about 5 full days of the medical team there, on top of everything you see on TV, all the performance drills, tests, and all those types of things that happen on the field, the interviews being an important part. But the coaches and the team put this all together on top of the medical to be able to help pick their players that are going to fit their gaps the best, and also pick a player that is hopefully going to have longevity in the league and great future aspirations. And so putting that entire equation together was, I think, really where we shined for teams, because we found a way to talk coach speak really well and not just give medical grades and some of these other things that we were traditionally doing, which I thought was good, but it was really hard to marry it up and say, let's bring everything together. And so now that's where really the next generation of the predictors got born, was putting the health metrics plus the stuff we could do at the combine plus all the other performance metrics from college and conference they played and everything else to come up with their predicted performance over 3 years. And that was it still remains a very powerful product for teams to utilize.
As I reflect on, and not just professional sports, but just about any endeavor, some of the most valuable people are the ones that can take really, really complex concepts and tons of data that would confuse the average person, myself included, and boil it down to kind of its lowest common denominator and some digestible information that we can use to make decisions. And it just occurs to me that is, in a lot of ways, what you're doing. You're taking all this complex medical data and then packaging it in a way that a Bill Belichick or anyone else in professional sports can digest it and then use it to make good decisions. Is that a good characterization?
Yeah, Matt, 100%. One of our slogans also is, arming fans with unparalleled insights based on our interpretation. We do the work for you. We ask the questions and, provide the best insights possible. Then the fans ask us questions, and they're really good questions, and we love them. How does second year look like after an ACL injury in this type of player with this type of league and this type of turf? And we have all that information. It's really cool.
I've got to believe that extends itself to fantasy football as well. Is that fair to say?
Yes, exactly. And fantasy is one of our products as well, and a lot of because it's all Fantasy is a surrogate of performance, and that's what we do. We predict performance.
Predicting performance. And is that just in NFL football? Are you using it in other applications, other sports, and then maybe beyond the world of sports into other business endeavors and so on?
Yeah, so the latter, we are in several business endeavors in terms of, again, back to human capital and keeping those that have physical jobs that can't really say some of the companies we're working with, but helping them to understand injuries and rehabilitation and big data to help their employees perform better. And then back to pro sports, we've started diving really deep now into NBA, baseball, EPL, others, now that our framework and overall engine is very well refined. It's very similar concepts.
I spent 25 years, give or take, in manufacturing, and I could just see huge applications in that world. We used to have so many, and still do, but it's a lot better. Soft tissue injuries, carpal tunnel, back injuries, lifting injuries. I mean, all these types of things that are really, really, number one, terrible. I always said at the end of the day, I don't care how the business performs. Number one goal is send everybody home to their families healthy, and everything else is secondary to that. But also really expensive, right? You have somebody out on workers' comp for 3, 6, 12 months or what have you. Somebody's paying for that. And in one form or another, it's going to come back on the company, and it does. So being able to use this type of data to understand, especially if you're working with a large organization that has a lot of people doing very similar jobs, understand what is that repetitive motion, how is that affecting that individual, pulling that data back together, and then making changes to work practices and policies to improve the experience from an injury standpoint. Are those some of the kind of things that you're working on outside of professional sports?
Matt, that's exactly it, and you lived it, and we're in it very deeply, and I applaud your knowledge of it, because not everyone gets it. They bring in external folks. You were internal, which is amazing, but we're doing exactly that to look at the analytics, the processes, the stick figure overlays of high definition video in the workplace to look at the energy, to look at the cycles, to look at body movements and positions, and using all that to embed it on top of our already very robust analytics platform to help these entities understand that better, because that's one of our company's core initiatives, because that's what we were born from. It took a lot of money to train a Navy SEAL or a Navy pilot or a surface warfare officer, male, female, it doesn't matter. And we wanted to protect that investment and make sure you were able to perform at the highest level.
Well, and it's got to be rewarding in a lot of ways. I mean, in as much as we talk about our mission here on the Tech Ed podcast is securing the American dream for the next generation of STEM and workforce talent, just the reward of knowing that, not only are you protecting huge investments in players and in Navy SEALs, but really improving lives, right? And helping people to extend their careers, helping people to just play a healthier career in professional sports and so on. Is that part of the mission that drives what you do?
The industry related to the fountain of youth is amazing. We see it all the time, and there's some hokey stuff out there, and there's some pretty cool stuff out there. What's getting better with all of that, Matt, as you intimated, is data and analytics, and really isolating out in this massive quagmire of stuff that you can do to perform, to live life longer, to live it more effectively. But we're going to have data and analytics to really help us and understand your body at the highest level. Another one of our company's tenets is precision medicine. We know, if I know more about your body, Matt, and give you that information and can help follow that, and it's amazing what you can do with that. But the way I can do that is with big data distilled down to now an N of one being you, on how to make that better.
Absolutely. That's it's got to be just an incredibly rewarding career that you're undertaking and enjoying along the way. So one last question before we get into a little bit of advice that you might have for the 15-year-old you, Matt. if I'm a business leader, we have a lot of manufacturers that listen to this podcast. We have a lot of people that are, in metal stamping businesses and machining businesses and assembly businesses and original equipment manufacturers that are building end use products and so on. As we work with manufacturers, there's a lot of them, especially the larger ones, Fortune 500 companies that are all in on data, right? And they're all doing the same kind of things that we're talking about in professional sports, they're doing in their operations. But then there's a lot of these folks that are, the 10, 25, $50 million companies that are just trying to get product out the door at the end of the day. And knowing what you know about data and knowing what you know about how using those insights can absolutely change player performance, Navy SEAL performance, operational performance. If somebody's trying to get started in this, what's your advice for them? Where should they go?
Yeah, Matt, this hasn't always been smooth for us going through this journey. And, where I think we were, and probably took a few missteps, and there's all of us have been through it in business and development and entrepreneurial stuff, and even with my orthopedic training, it takes time to hone your skill set. But I think it gets back to what we talked about earlier. If I look at some of those areas where I said, I wish I had one or two different steps there, I would have been here now, or I would have been emphasized on this more, is if you bite off too much, it's not going to work. You have to get the smart people around the table, leadership is huge, and going to your team and going to everyone and taking notes and say, what can we do better? What part of this process isn't right? What all the Lean Six Sigma stuff, all the things you do, but then really I bet you'll come up with 2 or 3 or 4 themes if you take 4 to 6 weeks and walk around with a yellow legal notepad and take some notes and talk to your folks, and you don't talk, you just listen as the leader, and get your C-suite together and see what they say. But that sometimes may be a bit disconnected from what's going on in the trenches, and put it together and then say, listen, here's 2 or 3 themes, and then ask those questions and then collaborate with a company that can use the data or come up with a way to help you answer those questions better.
Sure, absolutely. As you're answering that question, Matt, I'm just reflecting on a book I read a couple of decades ago. I think now, Eli Goldblatt was one of the he's the kind of the godfather of modern lean thinking and the theory of constraints. Wrote a book called "It's Not Luck," and in that book, it's written as a story, but they actually go through, if you haven't read it, and they take a stack of Post-it notes, right? And you start writing down problems. And what are the problems in our organization? You put Post-it notes all over the table. And then they're like, all right, now start looking at correlation and causation between those Post-it notes. And if something is a cause, put it closer to the center of the table. And if it's a result or an effect, move it toward the outside of the table. And they say after you get done with that process, which can take 3 or 4 hours, by the time you're done, you will have distilled at the center of the table the 4 or 5 things that you need to be working on. Because they're all causing all the other problems in your organization. And it's kind of the same thought as I was listening to you answer that question is how do we use data to do the same thing, right? How do we gather tons of data, create data sets, find somebody that we can work with? And I always say you don't have to be an expert on something in order to be able to use it. Find a data scientist, find an organization that is using AI platforms to find correlations and patterns, and then use that for business improvement. And I think it really in any endeavor in every market space, that's where we're going. You see the same future?
Oh, for sure. And as you were talking, I'm smiling because one of the things that I think we've done well is try to recognize areas where other people aren't recognizing. And so I guess my point back to everyone there is, if you go back to your business, your plant, your OEM, your manufacturing facility, whatever it is, you're like, well, I don't have data. I don't have anything. I don't have this. I haven't looked at it. I haven't set it up. We haven't prophylactically done this. I bet you have, and you don't know it. I guarantee you there's data there that you're not even seeing, and the process. And it could be a manual form sitting next to someone that's operating a machine. Or you have data from the machine that can be easily dumped and extrapolated based on X, Y, and Z, based on how much time it's on, based on how much it's doing this. So you guarantee you have more data than what you even know.
Absolutely. I sat on a panel about 2 weeks ago around artificial intelligence, and there was a couple of it was a wide range of different market spaces that were represented. But there was a gentleman that he was an engineer for a Fortune 500 company. Almost everybody would recognize it. Most of them have their tools in their garage. And this his observation I just thought was interesting. He said, "We're gathering data right now without any idea what we're going to use it for." And everybody kind of looked at him like, "Well, what's that for?" He's like, because in the future we're going to say, I wish we had data on this, and I want to be able to have that data. So he said, we're gathering all this data on things that we don't even know what we're going to use it, but the important thing is that we're gathering that data and archiving it so that we can use it in the future to, to find patterns in the work that we're doing. I just thought that was a really, really fascinating way of looking at the use of data, to have it when you're going to need it rather than starting to collect it when you think you need it.
Yeah, no question. That's a smart person, and you don't have to, put someone on it right away to analyze it. Just having it and prophylactic. It's what we do in medicine. I don't know my outcomes of a knee or shoulder surgery unless I prophylactically collected that data, and I want to know your pre-scores without being biased, your outcome scores, and we got a whole data bank of them, and shoulder and knee and back and elbow and what you name it, hip, and we're able to look at those personalized outcomes and see what's working and see what's not. But I don't have those insights unless I prophylactically have the data.
What a great conversation we've had with Matt Provencher on all kinds of topics. And as we wrap up our time here together, Matt, and just thinking about, again, we start kind of finishing where we started. Your career path has been incredible. Who would have guessed when you chose an academic endeavor in electrical engineering that you'd be working with some of the most recognizable names in the world of professional sports and in the National Football League? But yet here you are. Great story. I do want to ask one question. It's a question we ask in one form or another to just about every guest here on the Tech Ed podcast. If you were to go back in time and have a conversation with the 15-year-old Matt Provencher about what he should be thinking about as he planned the next 30, 40, 50, 60 years of his life, what would you tell that individual?
Oh, well, that's such a great question, Matt. There are probably many things. I've been very lucky in my journey, but I guess if I distill it down to two, number one is mentorship. And I did not, none of this is, first of all, it hasn't come easy. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of dedication, perseverance, a lot of mistakes along the way, and picking yourself up after, why did I get a C minus on that engineering test? I'm like, are you serious? I thought I understood that stuff. You keep picking yourself up and you go talk to the professor and you figure it out, and you learn better and come up with some other ways of thinking about the problem. But having mentors along the way, and I've had so many great, physicians in the NFL Physician Society who've done it for years and years, mentor me, people in data science, people in business pursuits and entrepreneurial ventures, orthopedic surgeon mentors, people that have trained me that are retired now. Now we're training the next generation of orthopedic sports surgeons and sports specialists out there. So many times now it's time for me to, I'm giving in a way give back mode now after all the mentors that have helped me, but I still rely on my mentors all the time. So use your mentors, build up a database of mentors and use them extensively. There's nothing more than I love seeing people succeed around me and having them do well. And I love that. It warms my heart. The second thing I would say is, and this is hard, especially, and I've got teenagers, is patience. And there are many times I was like, I got to do this, and I got to wait a year for this, and I got to do another. Patience pays off, but you still need perseverance. You still need to stay on point, stay on focus. But it may not happen, whatever X is, right away. But if you have patience through that journey, it almost always pays off.
And you're a perfect example of how that patience can pay off. I will tell you, you're the first guest I think we've had that used the term database of mentors. I love that. That would have to come from a data guy, right? So how do we have this whole collection of individuals? But I think it's really insightful when you think about I just think about the individuals that I have that have influenced my life over the course of time, and it's not just one person, right? It's business mentors, it's coaches when you're in high school sports, it's your bosses early on. It's your family and so on, and having this database of mentors from whom we can draw on their experience and their mistakes that they made along the way to try and get us on the right path and move toward a really, really interesting life. You've had an incredibly interesting life, met some of the most interesting people on the planet. And we're just really happy, Matt, that we had an opportunity to meet an interesting person like you today on the Tech Ed Podcast. Thanks so much for taking time.
Well, Matt, it's the honor goes both ways. You've done amazing things, and it's a true honor to be here, and really love what you're doing with this. And thanks so much for your time. It's been an honor.
It's been an honor for us as well. Thank you. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast. If you haven't already, subscribe, leave a review, and if you liked this episode, share it with a friend. New episodes launch every Tuesday, so listen in next week.